Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us for the Faster, Smarter, Better 4 Secrets on How to Leverage Artificial Intelligence for Surprising Results. I'm Tracy Gardner, Global Marketing Director for VLink Inc., and your host for today's webinar. I hope you are doing well today. And we're going to take a look at the agenda for today's webinar real quick to find out what we're doing for the next 30 minutes. I think it'll be interesting for you all, so please hang on and hang in there. I think you'll truly enjoy it. Today, we're going to discover how a Silicon Valley-based startup used artificial intelligence to develop a revolutionary product that is changing the way negotiations are done. And we'll find out how picking the right development team is the key to success. We'll also hear from David Chan, CEO of IntelleXt, about what it took to achieve success for his business when using artificial intelligence, and how this brand new startup is leveraging this new AI-driven product for surprising results in the real estate industry, although what he's learned can be applied to any industry. You'll also hear from Nitin Nijhawan, the Chief Digital Officer of VLink, who will speak to building a powerful software development team from the start for better business results. And of course, ask those questions, be sure and listen so you can put them in the chat, because we should have time for question and answer after the panelists speak. Chan is CEO and founder of IntelleXt and a respected Silicon Valley executive accomplished at negotiating and closing complex multi-million-dollar financing and venture funding deals. And Nijhawan has a passion for creating and driving transformation and innovation to clients. He leads the delivery of VLink's technology solutions primarily through developing the firm's centers of excellence around the globe. Nitin will talk about how to achieve success in finding the right product team. So thank you so much for joining us, and to our panelists. We appreciate you, David and Nitin, being a part of this. David, let's start with you first. You're going to share about your journey in developing IntelleXt, which is really revolutionizing the real estate industry. But your journey has been anything but smooth. I know we've spoken before. Talk about some of the twists and turns your journey's taken as you've gone into your product development with IntelleXt.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks for having me on the webinar, Tracy. I think every startup company goes through lots of twists and turns, and we are just like every other startup in that respect. I'm going to share with you a few slides, if I may, and talk through our journey. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
So the company, as Tracy mentioned, is called IntelleXt. We are a company that's using AI to help individuals make better decisions when they're buying or selling real estate. And our tagline is that we're making real estate personal, because today it's all but personal. When you put in put in a search, it's very generic what kind of results you get. And we're trying to make that much more personal to you as an individual. So the first slide I want to share with you is that the journey is never a straight line. When we started our path to augmented AI in negotiations, we started off 2.5 years ago in the area of enterprise negotiations. Think about when you're purchasing a large contract in chips or computer devices, licenses, etc. It was a very difficult journey because you have lots of different stakeholders involved in trying to agree on what types of terms and conditions they want to agree to. It's a lot of stakeholders have to agree to it, lots of different parameters by which you can negotiate. So that was 2.5 years ago. We then pivoted right after that into financial services space. For example, ISDA contracts or M&A contracts. Those types of contracts also very complex when you're trying to involve lots of stakeholders in acquiring a company, especially if you're acquiring for $1 billion or $2 billion. Lots of different parameters need to be negotiated, and lots of different people need to be involved. Finally, about maybe 5 months ago, we decided real estate was really where we wanted to go. So we did maybe actually 4 pivots from the time we started to where we are today. In real estate, there are contracts globally that are pretty much the same. What kind of price you want to offer on a property, when do you want to close on that property, what the escrow period is going to look like, inspection, contingencies. So lots of different parameters by which you can negotiate, and making sure you're negotiating it correctly is really where we ended up at today. And this is the journey. Again, the journey is not a straight line. A good friend of mine back in the old days at Oracle used to teach me about sailing, and sailing is all about tacking, following that path through the water. That's pretty much what every startup goes through. So that's my first part of my my conversation with everybody. The second piece of this, which is also very important, and I live by this particular one, the customer is everybody's responsibility, but especially the CEO. In the 2.5 years since we've been on this journey, I've spoken to every single customer, probably, I don't know, a couple hundred, to get and understand what is it that they're looking for. And we pivoted as well based on the feedback that we got from these customers that we spoke to. And let me also say this, you cannot leave it up to a junior person to give you feedback on what the customer is saying. You have to take responsibility for asking the tough questions and actually taking the tough answers back into the company. So, there was a time when I hired a marketing person to help me with this, and I realized, I wasn't getting the correct feedback. I wasn't getting the real-time feedback that I needed to pivot on the product. So make sure that that it's up to you personally as a CEO and a senior executive to talk to every single customer. And one of the reasons why that's so important too is because as I'm speaking to the customer, I'm realizing that there are product features that we thought were important that were not important to them. And then of course, when you do a pivot, you need to know that what you're pivoting to is what the customer is looking for as well, especially going from an enterprise to a enterprise product to a customer, direct to customer type product. The next thing I'll say is this is, I don't know if any of you have read the book by Sun Tzu, The Art of War. I was told once that he wrote this, but I found out that he was not the one who wrote it, but I'll use it anyway. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So again, remember I told you about the journey from enterprise to now real estate. In the enterprise, there are lots of competitors doing enterprise level purchase order negotiations and whatnot, using AI. And so that competitive landscape changes depending on where you're going with it, right? And so I had lots of people work with me to understand who are the competitors in the space. So in the beginning, it was enterprise purchase agreements. There was all kinds of competitors in that space. Then there was M&A contracts, and then pivoting to ISDA contracts. Lots of competitors in that space. Now in the real estate space, we're finding that there are competitors in this space, but not doing what we're doing. And I'll just say it out loud, it's a social real estate app. There aren't anybody in this space, which is quite unique. But so we have spreadsheets, we have understanding who's got funded, what kind of product they're doing, when they're planning to roll out, et cetera, et cetera. So we're very clear on who the competitors are and keeping them close to our chest, more so than our friends, although we like our friends too. Don't get me wrong. Here's a really important thing that I learned in our journey as well. IP, or intellectual property, and patents are your secret weapon. We brought on a really solid company to help us with IP, and we now have developed patents around our technology such that we can then take it on to the next level, where if the company does not succeed, the patents can actually live on beyond us, which is a really powerful thing. If you think about patents being a 20-year journey, it could actually be a secret weapon that you need to incorporate into your business. You should think about incorporating into your business. So we found some patents on our technology, which we feel are very protectable, a big moat around our technology and our company. And we're very, very confident about that. But all of these things are really good things to know. But I'll tell you this: without a strong development team, everything you're doing is just a pipe dream. And again, in our 2.5-year journey, we went through 4 development teams. Believe it or not, 4 development teams. The first one was 2 people just kind of ad hoc doing work for us out of Microsoft. That didn't work because they're doing ad hoc. The second one was out of the Eastern European country. And they were very good at visuals, but not good on the back end. You need both front end and back end team to make it all work. And actually, even you also need a middle layer there as well. The third team was, I hate to say it, a lot of talk, no action. And we spent probably 6 months wasting our time working with them until we finally landed on the team we're working with now that has everything we need: AI, front end, back end, middleware as well. So I'm quite happy that knowing that we have a strong development team.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely, David. Very informative. And, like you said, not what you expected. I mean, I learned a lot there, that I didn't know before, but at this point, proving very successful. And I'm so glad to hear that. You mentioned going through 4 development teams to get to where you are today. That's amazing. Nitin Nijhawan, that's where I want to bring Nitin in, because he is really an expert at producing and building and scaling great and very successful development teams. And Nitin, you recently did this for a company out of Boston called Rediker, an e-management learning system. You talk about how you went about scaling and building the team for this company and how that was so successful. I know that team was in there for about a year working on legacy modernization. And there's just some key points that you want to point out to us on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, for bringing up this point. Actually, building a team depends on what exactly we need in the product. Like what David just mentioned, he started off with 4 development teams and he pivoted from enterprise to real estate, like all different verticals. Started with enterprise selling and negotiations, then to financial services, then to real estate. And is bringing in AI as an instrument in negotiations in real estate transactions. So each and every pivoting needs a different skill set, a different requirement to build the product, to build the right product. At one stage, you need a AI heavy resources. At one point, you need a backend heavy resources. Another stage, you need to be a front end heavy resources, or you need both. So it's very important to understand what the product is, what the vision is, where we are heading, what is the target segment that we're trying to capture, and then identify team according to that vision. So you need to be agile and nimble as a development partner. Looking at the requirement, understanding it, screening the right candidates, what exactly company is looking at to staff. Like what David said, he started off with 2 Microsoft resources, and then he moved on to different companies. And then finally, he's at the right stage. Third and most important is right people at right size. What does it mean is what kind of skill set you need. In my experience, what I've seen is you need 3 bucket resources looking at David's use case. You need a front end and back end resources, you need a back end and AI resources, and you need front end, back end, and AI resources. This will give him a lot of flexibility in building the product features that he's looking at. For a product, it's very important is go to market. It's not about money. It's about what features we are launching, how well we are identifying our customers, how well we are targeting them and converting them. That is more important. So it's always important to build the right team, a right team in right place. And what I generally do is, like what David said, customer is my responsibility. So customer is my responsibility as well. So what I do is I screen candidates myself. I look at what customer vision is, what product is all about, and then identify the right skill set and build the right team with the right mix so that I can support them better. And I want to be agile and nimble at the same time. What does it mean is, in case David needs, say, for example, a UX person to jump in and come up with a nice prototype for a new feature that they're launching and do an A/B testing in the production, I will jump in straight up and provide that resource and do that. That ways, I'm working as a partner, not as a vendor, to support. And important thing is to encourage innovation. What does it mean is, if I see there is a feature that is being leveraged in a right way, and it can be leveraged in the right way by the customers, and I'm seeing these through insights that I'm capturing through the product, I will be the first one to go to David and say, David, looks like this is the hot selling cake. I mean, we should promote this feature. Why don't we give this a trial offer on this feature to attract new customer acquisitions, to do more acquisition? And feedback is very important. So once my resources are working, I generally time to time in a week, I set up a meeting. I generally get involved myself, generally in retrospectives, to understand what is going right and what is going wrong, so that I work hand in hand with the CEO and CIO of that company to see where we are heading as a group. And the last and the most important thing is communicate. Communication is very important. What this hand is doing, this hand should know. So what development team is doing and where we are heading, there should be a constant feedback coming from both the sides. So communication back and forth between the CEO, CTO, CIO, the managers, the respective or people, and the developers is very important. So time and time communication is very important. I don't know, David, how well you agreed to me on what I just said about how to build the right product team. Maybe you can share a few of your insights on what I just said.
Yeah, no, I agree. In fact, everything you said makes complete sense to me. Especially the communicate. We've had so many issues in early days of working with product teams. Sometimes we're not hear from them for 2 weeks. So we have no idea whether things are going in the right direction or not. You need to have constant communication with each other. I also like what you said about when you find something that is useful, that you bring it back to us to bring more users into the mix. I think that's really, in Asia, we call it the Kaizen, constant improvement too, right? Feedback loop has to be there.
Yes,
yeah.
Feedback has to be very important, and most importantly, data that we're capturing on the product, and how we are channelizing those insights back to the product development. That is also very important. So as a CDO, what I ensure is we are capturing the right data points in the product, and we are channeling those feedback back to the development process. And we brought those feedback and inputs to you time and time again. David, this is what it is happening. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? So that will improve product overall from customer experience perspective.
Yeah, I also like Nitin, what you said about in our team we have a rapid prototype group that if a customer wants to see something
right,
cool and sexy, we can mock it up really quickly, right?
Yes, so real quick to an A/B testing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what customers want to see. So no, you're spot on with the kind of working with the right development team is so important. What you're saying.
Yeah, it's so good to see both of you talk back and forth, because you're getting the CEO point of view from somebody, and then you're getting the development side, Nitin with the product team. And I think, David, something that struck me as interesting that you said is, features that we thought were important to the customer. And so you guys spoke about that. So like that communication is key. And I know Nitin regularly had meetings with the company that I mentioned earlier, had those regular touch point meetings. And I think that continuous feedback loop is just imperative. I wanted to see, Abhishek, I wanted to bring in my co-host, Abhishek Agarwal. And Abhishek, thanks for co-hosting today. And you've been monitoring the chat. Do we have any questions in the chat, Abhishek?
Yes, Tracy, we do have one question. Okay, so the question is for the David. what is the time it took to develop the market-ready version of the product, and what was the team size it required to build the product?
Okay, so let me talk about the first iteration of what we were doing. To develop market ready for the enterprise purchase agreement using AI, very complex. AI requires lots of data, and so and a lot of NLP, natural language processing, to understand what the contract's about. So that team was fairly large. I think we had, well, when I say fairly large, we had about 10 people working on that problem, but we never got it. We never got it ready because it was just sorry to say too complex of a problem to bite off on the first go round. The where we're going now is real estate contracts. The beauty of real estate contracts is that they're fairly standard across the country. You can only negotiate, say 15, 20 different terms in that type of a contract. So that team, we have about 20 people working on it now, but it's quick sprints. So we started the new development is starting, in fact, now. It'll be done first MVP GA version in September. So it's about 4 months from where we are today to launching GA.
Wow. And that seems quick to me. I'm not sure from Nitin's point of view what he thinks, but Nitin, what do you think? Is that pretty quick or is that about standard?
It all depends on what we are targeting in GA, what features we are looking at. And so the idea is to go to market real quick, to capture the feedback as soon as possible. And that's the objective. Sooner we go to the market, sooner we go with GA and capture feedback, sooner we will refine the product. I mean, it's not about holding back the features and going it up live upfront in one go, then actually building incremental product and capturing those feedback as we build it. Because we will be pivoting so many times in this journey of development. We just started, like what David just said, they go GA in September. By next year, September, he will have already 4 different versions of the product, the same feature, because that's what customer is looking at. It's always good to have those feedbacks in place as early as possible.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. And so, in fact, our GA is going to be a scaled down version of the full product, just so we can get feedback from customers. But yes, it will be market ready. In other words, be tested, and but not all the features that we plan to do. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we have a couple more questions from the chat. Abhishek, go ahead. With the questions.
Sorry, yes. So we have another question for David. Is this product extensible to other geographies, or does it require additional technical modifications?
Well, okay, so by geographies, if you mean in the US, no, it's 100% ready, will be ready for the US. For other countries that require different languages, it'll be different from a language perspective, yes. And sorry, I'll add something else. We've also been testing this in Singapore, and the idea that we are testing does work in Singapore, but there's still some slight modifications. But the framework should be extensible to any country.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Thank you, David. And we have time for a few more questions. And I think, Abhishek, I saw one come through.
Yes, Tracy. So, David, how do a company, IntelleXt, protects IP with the contractor like VLink, while at same moment developing the product as is yet not ready to get IP protection? What type of document do you sign with contractor VLink?
So I think I'm reading it too. I think the question is, working with VLink, how do, let me just make sure I understand the question.
Any contractor, I think he means.
Any contractor, yes.
Yeah. How do you protect your IP with someone like
with the contractor?
Your development company, right?
Yeah, so the good news for me and our companies, I have 3 attorneys on as co-founders. One is a patent attorney, the other one's a commercial attorney, the other one is actually a prosecutor. So, and then I also have a outside IP strategy team that are also attorneys. So we have very solid ways of protecting our IP with any contractor, and we clearly delineate what is the IP that we're protecting from our standpoint. But if it's something we develop directly with VLink or any other contractor, we agree or not agree on what is theirs and what is ours and what is joint. But we're very clear at the beginning what is ours.
Gotcha. And it makes sense. I mean, that makes sense from like, what's your experience in the past compared to what David just said?
Same, absolutely
Yeah.
same. And the IP protection is must, and those contracts needs to be laid out at first,
Yeah.
before even the engagement takes off.
Yeah.
Very clearly defined, articulated, and legal document should be signed. Yes.
Okay. Abhishek, any other questions in the chat? I know we have a few minutes left.
It's in the chat. There are a few questions.
Oh, I see a question, I guess, for me here.
Yes, I think just one question pop up right now. You mentioned this product is for use in real estate industry, but it can be used for negotiations in other industry.
Okay, that's a good question. So the framework by which we built our AI engine is for negotiating anything, but we specifically tune it now for real estate. We have a patent. Actually, the patent's actually in review now with the patent office, which is fantastic. We feel we're gonna get it, but it is for any industry.
Great. All right. Any other questions from anybody? If you can put them in the chat, or I know that the attendees can't speak, but you can certainly put things in the chat. Anything else, Abhishek?
Yeah.
I know we're
Tracy,
almost out of time.
There
Go
is
ahead.
one in the chat by Jim Farrell. I think it's for you, David. Maybe you can go over it in the chat.
Yeah, it says here to me, it says you mentioned that you received a feedback that a feature you thought was important, but to the customer it was not. What was your next course of action? Oh, yeah. So there was a very large luxury brand auto manufacturer who wanted us to do something. Well, did like what we were talking about, but they wanted to add more features, and we basically called that feature creep. And we decided some of it we might take into consideration, others we would not, because we knew we had a plan of where we wanted to be with our roadmap at a specific point in time. So we told the customer that we would add, I think it was 1 or 2 features that they wanted, but the rest of it we could not do until probably 6 months to a year later.
Okay, and I see there's another one, and I believe it talks about smart contracts. What about
smart contracts?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that for me? Or?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
David.
So in our real estate pivot, we are doing blockchain and smart contracts. So imagine, we're still in stealth mode, so I can't tell you everything about it, but imagine that you know, you want to sign a contract with somebody and you don't want to go through the traditional method of a real estate agent, a title company, and all that. Imagine it being done seamlessly for you using smart contracts and blockchain.
Okay, great. Well, that we are out of time, believe it or not. It went by very fast. Thank you, Nitin and David, for being such wonderful panelists. You guys were just absolutely great. If any of you attendees who attended, thank you for attending. We certainly appreciate it. If you think it was interesting, we will send out a link after a recording of the link. So please, you can share it out with your friends and other people you think might be interested. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day, and we appreciate you all attending. And thanks again, David and Nitin and Abhishek.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.